Hey there guys, welcome back to class 4, pose to pose, straight ahead. Hope you guys are enjoying the series, but we got a lot to cover today, so I'm going to jump right in. So here we go. Pose to pose and straight ahead are two different approaches for creating animation. Pose to pose is a more thought out approach that blocks in the major poses that define the action. You plan out everything ahead of time. These poses are then broken down with anticipation, overlapping action, in-betweens, and secondary actions to help craft the performance. Straight ahead is a more linear approach. In classical 2D animation, straight ahead means that you start at frame 1 and just go for it, drawing one frame after the other until you reach the end of the shot. To take this literally in 3D, you would have to pose your character on frame 1, then 2, then 3. It would be the exact same approach as stop motion animation. So for a 240 frame shot, you'd have 240 poses for a total of 10 seconds of animation. Now, I don't know anyone that only uses one of these techniques. Usually you'll be working with a hybrid approach that uses the strength of both approaches. Pose to pose provides a solid foundation for the animation that is easy to block in, modify, and add to. Straight ahead leads to happy accidents and works well when layering new motions over your poses. Just think of animation like modeling. You block in the rough forms and keep refining the model in subsequent passes, adding complexity as you go. If you were modeling a head, you wouldn't go to the origin and start extruding eyelashes. Same for animation. If you were animating someone running away from an accident where everything around them is collapsing, you wouldn't start the shot by keying the blinks. So start with the broad strokes, smaller strokes, and onto the smallest strokes. But I know what you're thinking. What do broad strokes look like in animation? So let's take a look. So here's a good example of a more pose-to-pose workflow. See, I blocked out each one of these poses in an initial pass with nothing on the timing. Then fixed the timing, then smoothed it out, then finaled it. So if you go in here, you can see here's my anticipation, squash, push off, jumps. So while this was pose to pose, it was kind of straight ahead because I started here and I went to the end, but I just didn't put a pose on every frame. And while I was back here, I was adjusting poses here and here, like constantly kind of moving back and forth through the sequence. But it was chunky, like a pose every 5 frames. Then I'll do my GL preview and I'm like, okay, that's too slow, this needs fixing, that needs fixing. So that takes us to this one, which is a little quicker. So once I liked the timing of that, I smoothed it out. And there we go. Now this one, this was almost completely straight ahead on every single piece from beginning to end. So I had an animation of the bike. Originally it was going just in a straight line. And I wasn't very excited, so I'm like, okay, I'll grab some pylons from the share, and then I'll just pull the vertices on the curve and get them going around here. So that was another layered pass of bike animation. So then I attached Hero to the bike. And if you watch, he's not attached yet, just his wrists and his ankles are. So the bike is still driving his animation, but it was another pass. He was attached. You can see back here his hands following the bike. So it did the pass. So now he's attached to the bike, but you'll see he's just attached and going for the ride. Nothing's happening. His arms are being pushed by the handlebars. This one has some more shoulder stuff. And then here's the final with the overlap and him looking into the curves. But that's a good example of layering straight ahead passes, building out from the hips to the back to the shoulders to the elbows. So now that you kind of get an idea of the process, let's get going with our shot. So staring at a blank page can be pretty terrifying. It's tough to move forward if you don't have any direction. But fortunately for us, the New Adventures of Squishy Box has been picked up for its first season. And we've all been hired by a satellite animation company, and we'll be tackling some shots from the pilot episode. So, in this episode, Squishy Box has come to the edge of the Sludge River and has to jump across two floaters and make his way across the river. So we got 2 shots. They're going to be in the same file. Zoom in here. You can see here we've got Squishy Box looks across the sludge river. He's standing on the edge here. Then it's going to cut, and this will be the framing for the next shot. And you can see the camera starts to pull out. With that, he's going to have to jump to the first floater, and there's a note that there's supposed to be ripples in the sludge. He's going to stay there for a bit. He's going to bound off to the next one as the camera continues to pull back. He's going to land on the second floater. Again, we've got to include the ripples. And he's going to do his third jump, possibly out of frame, and then land on the other side. And that'll be the end of the shot. So this week's class comes with 2 files. You should have access to the storyboard, and you should be able to download this Sludge River set that we're going to do the animation on. It was modeled and rigged in 601, so everything should work perfectly. Couple controls to go over. There's one here for our floaters. Grab that, we'll be able to move that around. Same with this one. We have a switch here, and you can turn on textures. You guys can do whatever you want with that set. If you want to render it out when it's done, it'll look pretty cool. But for animation, sometimes it's tough when you have just something that's just solid black. So I like to just kind of work with grayscale when I can. Okay, so the next thing you're going to want to do is open up your Squishy Box and just clean it up, make sure it's ready for import into the other scene. So just make sure you've only got the squishy rig in here. Get rid of any extra lights or whatever that you don't want to take with you, because we already have lights and stuff in the other scene. And then in the shader tree, I only have one material on them, and I've gotten rid of everything else. Another thing you're going to want to double check is your groups. Make sure that you have the actor with 27 channels in it, because we were messing with our actor last week. We did the one that only has 3 channels in it. So before you go over, you might want to make sure that you have the actor with the 27, the 9 channels from each curve, and then we're good to go. You might be tempted to grab the Squishy Rig folder and just drag it up into the Sludge River set. Don't do that. That's a bad idea. You will lose your actor if you do that. So the best way to import him is to just save him out. I've saved mine out as Squishy Box, and we'll go to Sludge River. So in this set, just do a straight file import, and go to Squishy Box, and then he will show up where he's supposed to be. So which way are we jumping here? We are jumping from here, so I could select his main, and I'll translate him back. Zoom in here. Let's get him ready for his big action shot. Alright. So if you look at the shader tree, Squishy Box comes in up here. I'm just going to turn him off. This is kind of like how I like to do stuff in the beginning. I'm also going to turn off the ground plane because it's getting a little bit noisy down there on the ground. So yeah, here we go. Squishy Box is loaded, ready to start jumping, and we're ready to go. So how are we going to block this out? We've talked about pose to pose. We've talked about straight ahead. So which approach would suit us best for now? I think for simplicity's sake, I'm going to put all our gross body motion on the main. So we'll only have 9 channels to deal with for the overall action. We'll have actually 6, because we probably won't do any scaling on the main. And then we'll go in and we're going to layer poses on top of this. Because if we go pose to pose with these 3 controllers, we're going to have XYZ and scale translations for all of this. 27 channels we'll be dealing with to get him to go from here to here to here. It just makes the video longer. It doesn't necessarily have to be. If this was a character with arms and stuff, we wouldn't be able to use this method. We would have to do his crouch, we would have to do his extension pose from the jump, we'd have to do his contact pose into his squash, and we'd have to pose those all out. But for this, because his shape doesn't really change, I mean, as far as appendages are concerned, we'll keep it simple and straightforward, and we'll do everything on the main. So we know that we're going to need some extra time in the timeline because we do have an establishing shot, but that's not going to be super long. So let's say we'll make that a 2-second shot, so about 50 frames, right? There's not much time left here, so go down to your settings here, and we're just going to make the scene end at 200 frames. Okay. And I'm going to select our main. Hit the W key and S. We're not using our actor yet because we're just kind of putting him in place. So the cut is at 50, so he's going to need to stand there for a little bit. He can't just take off at the cut. So I don't like working when I'm this zoomed out, right? So if you grab these handles here, you can kind of crop your timeline. It's like a zoom tool in an editing package or whatever. I like to work on fives, just keeps things organized until I start breaking things down later. So let's say he sits there for 20 frames, S, and then we'll say he'll do a 30 frame jump. So go to 100, and now let's move him over. We'll push him down. Cool. Okay, so he is going to stay on this thing and it's going to float for a bit. So he's going to be on here for some amount of time. So if he was on there for a second, 1/1000, including this thing going down and then going back up, say 24 frames. So we'll middle click drag and it'll hit S again. I would usually do this whole thing with the graph turned off, but for explanation's sake, I'll keep it open. So here, we've got our cut at frame 50, sits for, was it 30 frames I think we said? If you move this down here, you can kind of go back and see what we're doing. So he's going to hit. Here's the jump. This is the jump. So halfway point of the jump would be 85. So we can go back to there. We can actually push this up. And you can see our Y curve. So he's going to go from 50 and jump down to the first floater. He's going to stay on the floater. And then the last jump was 30 frames as well, so we'll go 120 to 150. And you can see right now he's in world. We've turned him, but he's kind of pointing in a different direction. The control is not kind of level with where he's facing. So you can switch that down here in local. So we can hit S, and now we can turn him around, kind of aim him where he's going, and we'll pull him back to here. Alright, so then we can go back to the middle, and we'll just push him up. I don't know how high we want him to go. We'll work all this stuff out later. We're just blocking this stuff in. So then he's going to land. I think he sat for 25 frames last time for a second. So we'll put him to 75. Actually, we'll make it a little... Let's make it 70. Again, I have no idea what this timing is going to look like. We're just getting his positions in place. The timing of them we can deal with later. Broad strokes. Remember broad strokes. And then another 30 frame jump would put him at 200. I hit the E key. Let's get him landing closer to the edge for a little bit of drama. Okay. So if you double click the timeline here, this bar, it'll pop back out. to the full length. So with barely doing anything at all, we can take a peek at what we've got. So I'm going to do a preview half, see how it looks. So he sits, jump, jump, jump. Huh, I forgot to put the other jump in. But I think you'll agree that that is pretty slow and not very exciting. So let's go back in and fix it up. Select our main. I'm actually going to hit the E key. And key that because it doesn't look like they've been getting any keys because I forgot to key them on frame 1. So now if we go to frame 1, so we'll hit S, select both of these so we can see what's going on. Hit S for that, so now everything's getting keyed. It's going to sit in that same position till this frame. But I think this definitely has to be quicker. This is not very exciting right now. Looks like he's in outer space. So we'll shave 5 frames off every action. Okay, so we had the jump. We'll take 5 off that. And to the landing. So now the jumps will be 20 frames instead of 30. His time on the floater, I think we'll still keep that to about 25 frames for a second. So 90, 10, 25. And then his next jump, we could slide this over. Again, it's going to be 10 up, 10 down. Go. Keep him on there for 25, so 5, 60. This will be the floating. And then his jump would be 80 frames. Put that there, and he also needs his middle position that we forgot. Well, I forgot. So we've done another pass of blocking, super quick, nothing fancy. We'll pull this back out and do another, close this down, do another preview. Alright, so it's going to sit, jump, get balance, jump, get balance, and jump and get balance. Okay, that timing's working a lot better. And once we fix our curves, that'll be a lot snappier. Okay, so like having to select this and look at keys to kind of figure out what's happening and where the jumps are it's a bit annoying. So if we scrub back to here, we know that he sits here and he takes off here. It would be nice if there was a kind of a visual way that we could kind of see this before it happens. So if you middle click in this little space between the dope sheet and the timeline, you can add a little marker. It's a little time marker, and inside of each of these are all kinds of options of shapes, color, label, delete it. I encourage you to go in here and play with these. I'm just going to make it red, and I'm just going to put these here so I know where all my contact poses are, where he's taking off and landing. I'll select these two, right click, color, red. Okay, so when he's landing, take off, landing. These might change later, but if it's just nice to have them there. And if I deselect, they disappear. But that's fine because I should actually go in and make this bigger, because it's kind of hard to select in these wide shots. It was easy when we were doing bouncing ball stuff with him last week. So let's fix that quick. I'm going to pop this open, display, locator shape, and let's just fix the radius of that. Make it a little easier to grab. Nothing crazy, but there we go. Nice. Okay, so I'll close this down. And so there's our jumps. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Perfectly lifeless. So let's start going in and tweaking some curves. This should all be old hat. This is kind of what we've been doing the whole time. The one big difference is now is that we're going to be landing and staying on something that moves, and we're also working on more than one axis. Right? Before everything was back and forth, but now we actually have we have depth to deal with as well. So let's select our position Y key. We know what to do here. Select all our contact poses. We'll hit linear, and we'll just pull these. Get some nice arcs going. That up, and you'll see boing, boing. One thing that's missing though is he's jumping sideways, so he jumps into this turn, which is fine. But then he's probably going to have to do a quick turnaround before he gets to here. So we could do that quick. And then this will go to the next jump. And we can see our little red marker here, so we know that's what's there. Hit S, and then he's going to have to pivot around again quickly. Again, all this stuff is very loose at this point. The Y key. It's very hard to get any distance if you're looking the opposite direction that you're jumping. Even that, so he should probably be facing more like this. There we go. So if we pull back now, we can just see jump, turn, jump, turn, jump. Perfect. So we know that Squishy's going to jump onto this box, and we know we need this box to go up and down. And in a perfect world, Squishy would just come for the ride, because we don't want to have to go in here, animate up, down, and then kind of like match animate this one. I mean, it could be done, but it's a pain. It's time consuming. So what would be perfect is if he could just jump onto this and just stick onto it for the 25 frames he's there, and then jump off. And for this, we're going to use dynamic parenting. So we know that he's going to land frame 90. I'll zoom in on the timeline here a bit. So at frame 90, if we click on our main, hit dynamic parenting, and add parent. Once you add parent, you're going to get this little purple icon thing. And we're going to drag this to the barrel control. You can see that there's a connection been made here. There we go. So now I'll pop open the graph. I'm just going to key the rotate and position channels of the barrel. And we know he stays for 25 frames, I think, so he'll be here till there. So now if we push barrel down, Squishy's going to come for the ride. Go up to 115. Just select all this here. Middle click. There. So now Squishy's going to come, land, and then take off. But you can see that there's still a connection when Squishy takes off at 115. So if we go to a frame 116, go to dynamic parenting, and set it to world. Now that connection's broken, you'll see. So there's the purple connection to the barrel, and then the barrel's gone. So then we're going to need to do the same thing over here. Let's frame this up. Select our main. So we land at 135. So we'll drag this to here. And we're going to be there till 161. So pop that off there, dynamic parent, and switch it to the world. So the connection's broken again. So as soon as Squishy lands, purple connection is made, the parent, it'll be there for whatever we do to the barrel, and then pop. I'm going to fly across and land on the ground. And we don't need to parent on the ground because the ground's not moving. So to see what's happening behind the scenes, if we pop open Squishy's main, set the F key in here, you can see under the main we've got a dynamic parent has been added. And if you click on it, you guys understand curves now. So this is a stepped curve, and you can see what's happening. I could actually change this. You see at 90, the connection is made. So we could actually go in dynamic parent, and we'll set this to world, and then that'll key that there. So he jumps, there's no connection, and then over one frame, the connection is made, the dynamic parent is turned on. He sinks, it's turned off again, right here. He's in world space until he hits here. Bang, the connection, you can see it pop on there to the barrel control. And then he lands. So let's get in here and give this the floater a little bit of love. Because once we get this going, we'll just copy this animation over to the other one. Maybe make a couple small tweaks. So Squishy lands, and probably going to need our graph. So right off the bat, this is not a very natural. Goes down and then up, which is fine, but if I was jumping on something, it wouldn't smoothly go into this, right? The position Y, we'd have to break that because it would go down hard. It'd be like, boom. It wouldn't ease into if someone was jumping on it. So we could push this down. I don't know how far we want to push it. I was thinking it could go down really slowly and kind of build up and then pop back up. So we could even slide this. We'll slide that to. Actually, we got to be mindful of the other keys because they'll get slid out of whack. So we can hit S on that. That way we're keying everything. And then we'll move. Yeah, so it'll go like it's sludge, and then boing, it'll pop them out. So to do that, think of this as like a big anticipation. So if that's the case, he's going to have to get pushed. This is going to have to go up higher. Like that. And then we can go back to frame 90, middle click and drag to get back to our start position. So, and you kind of shoot him out. Boing. Might need a little bit more. Maybe a bit much there. So, boing. There we go. So we'll just take this here, draw a box around that, Control C, we'll go over to here, and when we land, we'll just Control V. Oh, it did the position. I guess that's all we wanted. I don't think we did any rotations, did we? So if we move over here, boing, and it shoots them out again. Again, we can go in and add some. We can add some stuff to that later. You can see what's happening though. The dynamic parenting is turning off and our guy's getting shut down. So if we select here, we can see where he is. So we can go in and break our Y curve here. Linear. Push him up. Tweak that curvelet and then break this one here. This is the landing one. Tweak all these curves. So we're watching this, you can see our paths and our arcs. I mean, it's tough to tell how they look. It's kind of I mean, they're working, but it is a bit of a pain kind of to try and tweak something like this through the graphs. You know what I mean? I mean, that's how it's been done for ages and it still works, but it would be nice to get a bigger, broader sense of the animation as a whole. And this is probably my most super loved, favorite, awesome thing in Modo. And these are motion paths. So with your main selected, go down to motion path and just hit add a motion path. And we're going to zoom out. We could probably close the graph for a bit to take in the awesomeness. So if we scrub the timeline now, you'll see what's happening. You can see our curves. You can see how bad they suck. You can see it right, that's right in front of us. And it'll update. Now what I like to do, if you go into the motion path, there's options down here. There's one getting cut off at the bottom, just called draw scale. It's just under show keys here. Show keys, exactly what it does, show keys, but we want that. Show frames is also very handy. Time in and time out, usually what I do for time out is I crank it right to the end, make it longer than my shot. So basically now I have my whole animation. I could see here. Basically I could see the present, the past, and the future. I could see what's coming up. I could see when he lands, how he goes up and down, how linear and awkward that is. I could see this arc here is really not that good. And even the path of this animation here, there's a bit of a kink in it. So we can edit through these paths. So if we go into motion paths and hit edit motion path, these handles become active. So to see the awesomeness, I'm gonna select this. Oh, it's a bit. I wonder if I could hide the dynamic parent. Yeah, it's off, but it's still working. That's a good feature. I did not know about that. Okay, so now we can select this, and you can see we've got our handle there. So if I go up here, I'm adjusting my arc. And if you see in the graph here, this is position Y. I'm pushing this up, and I'm adjusting the key. Same as what we used to do before, except way more awesome. And I can see already that I like the shape of this curve better. And if I go to this key here, I've got a handle. I'm adjusting this key in my workspace, but is updating in my graph as well. You can obviously see the power of a workflow like this. If I select this key here, I can adjust the handle here, and it's tweaking my path. Or I could tweak the path. And you'll see now that these are the same shape. You'll also see that the animation sucks way less because it's like pop, bang. So let's go and fix this other path. Ugh, ugly path. Okay, so let's go to that in between. Let's push it up. Nice. Super jumps. And we'll go back to this one. We'll see what's happening to our Y curve here as well. Again, they're both getting updated. That's so awesome. Such a cool way of looking at stuff. So say we want this Y here to come in a little harder. I believe it's that pose there. Oh, this one. Hey now. There we go. And you can see the little dots on the time on the curve. These are frames, right? So you could see at the beginning here, these are a little bit further apart, which means he's moving faster, and then they kind of get closer together, and then they separate towards the end. So if we turn that off now, pop, way more spring in it, and ugh, that's heinous. So let's fix that last one. Select a curve, push them up. You can pull these out actually if you want, and you can see the effect that'll have. Wrong curve. But pull these out. And to this takeoff frame, you can fix that curve there. It's just such a nice way to work. And now that you guys have been tweaking animation the other way, you can see how powerful a workflow like this is, how much more interactive it is. So, scrub to the beginning. So there we go. Now look at our arcs. Look how nice those are, and how clean and easy to understand they are. So here we go. Boing, boing, boing. Okay, so we got our arcs sorted, our timing sorted. So it's time to start adding in some poses, because this is pretty lifeless the way it is. So I'm just going to pop this open. I'm going to turn back on my material, just because it might help see the poses a little bit better as we move through this. We're not going to spend a ton of time on this. It's going to be a lot of repetition of stuff we've done over the past couple of weeks. But practice makes perfect. So here we go. So with your squishy box selected, just throw a key down on frame 1. And if we pop open the graph, you can see everything's been keyed. Now typically I would work like this. I would just have this whole big open space here. But just so we can keep hammering home the relation between the graph and your keys and your curves, I'm going to keep it open. Once you guys get more familiar with everything, then you can close it up. And then you only have to deal with the graph once all your blocking is done. So let's go to frame 0. And what do we got going on here? Okay, so that's one of our contact poses there. So if you middle click and then right click and drag, you can get this little bar here. And I'm pretty sure we had he took off, he landed, and he took off there. So if you right click and grab this end handle here. So now I'm just going to put some markers in to kind of keep track of where stuff's happening. These are just a different type of marker. So middle click, it goes to there, the takeoff. So I will right click and drag to there. I'll throw it over here just so I know where there's this other one. So middle click, right click, drag. So it's just nice to have a reference of where our contacts are. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so let's start posing them. So he's not going to do anything here. He takes off around frame 70. So we'll key him there. And frame 71, I'm actually going to pull this in a little bit and then move this over just so we're kind of, so it's not like doing microbiology. Actually see what's going on. So frame 70, there's nothing. 71, I'm going to Shift A, pull this down, and pull this up. And we learned last week that if you stretch, you gotta get skinny in the middle. Okay, we'll key that. Make sure remembering to key it so everything's getting keyed, nothing gets left behind. So now, we'll see we got nothing happening and then jumps. And then he's going to land at 90. So we can take this key here, middle click, and drag to his contact position and key that. So if we select the curves, you'll see what's happening. He's jumping and then pops into this position and slowly goes all the way back to his default position, rides it out, and then goes to the next one. So it's kind of working, but that's also pretty dull. So halfway through the jump here, let's picture it like a standing long jump. So this would kind of come through. Always make sure you're orbiting around the model too when you're keying it. It's very easy to get trapped working through one point of view, and then once you orbit around, you'll find out that your character is completely off balance. So I'm going to pull this out like this. So now he's in this kind of follow-through position, and we'll key that. Don't leave anything behind. So he jumps, his legs go through, he's into that position there. That's not a very good landing position, so we will, the pose right before it, we'll stretch him down. Stretch that, maybe almost like he's going on his tippy toes. Point that, we'll point this down. Make sure he's kind of landing in the middle. Key that. So now he's just going to jump and boing. Okay, so we know he's going to squash down. And we know how to squash. So somewhere in the middle here, we'll squish this down, squish this down. And again, because we're keying everything, everyone knows where it's supposed to be. We'll scale this out, pull this down, and key it. Okay. Okay, so we could just we'll just key that there, and then we'll go back and we'll grab, not this one, we'll grab our default position, and we'll just middle click and drag it to here, and we'll key it. See, the good thing is the way we have this set up is that it doesn't matter where these controls do their stuff. We can copy and paste these no matter where we are, because all these controllers are coming for a ride inside the main. These are always just, these have small values on them between like 0 and 5. They're not moving in world space. They're all local. So now that we've copied this, it's going to jump, squish down, pop up, snaps into this position. But this is pretty weak here where he's landing. I can already tell this isn't going to work. If you were falling from that much height, you'd have a lot quicker squish. So he should just be going like bang. So we will, let's make sure we got all our keys here. Okay, so here's our squish pose. I'm going to pull this back. So now it's hitting a lot faster. And then he'll build momentum up into the next jump. Right now this is pretty weak because he's hitting and then he's slowly starting to jump up to the next pose, which is no good. So we'll take a couple frames past here, middle click, and we'll just drag this out. And then we'll key that. So now you can see he's going to go down into the squish quick, and he's going to kind of hold it, and then he's going to pop out. Okay, so the frame after, let's put in a big stretch here. Make him a little skinny. Again, you want to make sure that you orbit around them. Don't get too trapped in one view. See, we got a bunch of green channels left here because we're not moving everything. So we got to key it. So anyway, now between this pose and this pose, we're popping out. Bang. So if we go back, squish, bang. So we can probably grab our standing long jump pose from back over here. I'll just middle click, drag that to over here somewhere, key that. I think we got the right one. Yep, see he's going into his position here. And we can probably grab the contact pose from back here. It's this one. I'm just going to throw a key down here so I remember when I'm coming back. And grab this one. Middle click and key that. Okay, so this isn't perfect, but easy to fix. So we can slide this whole pose back, and we can go grab our other one, our relax pose, and we'll middle click and drag this to here, and we'll key that. So now he's going to hit. Oh, I overwrote our contact pose. Okay, so let's just go to this frame, and we'll pull this down. Scale that in. We'll do that tippy toe pose thing again. Scale this up. And key that. Okay, so now it's going up. It's doing the crossover. And squish. Okay, I'm not going to finish up this part right now. I'll do that. I won't force you guys to watch that. What else can we do over here? This part, I'm happy with this part. One thing I'm not happy with, and I'm noticing, is if you watch when he lands, he's starting to pivot like as soon as he lands, which would be impossible. You can't land and start spinning unless this thing you jumped onto was actually turning. You'd need to get your balance first, then you could turn, then you could take off, right? So I'm just going to fix this rotation here, and that is on the main. So if we go and look at where path is still on, you could turn that off too. If you go to motion path, just remove motion path. So that is on our rotate Y. So if we select our rotate Y, you can see what's happening here. So he lands and he starts, as soon as he touches, he starts to rotate. And then he takes off again. Now I don't mind the linear part, that there's no ease in or ease out, but it's just got to happen quicker. So I'm going to grab this key, pull it here, and I'll just go a few frames forward and we'll pull it back. So now he's going to land, and he's going to, and then he's going to take off. Okay, so what we're missing up here, you guys have probably already noticed, is our anticipation. And we're doing a big jump, so we're going to need a big move. So deselect that, we go back. As soon as you deselect something, you'll go back to the actor because it's selected here. So we know we're going to need a big antic for this one. So I'm going to push this down, scale it way out, push this one down. Okay, so now he's starting squished, and he's going to go into this pose. But we can probably lose this pose now. Actually, yeah, we don't need this pose. Because right now he's hitting this and then he's popping out, which is no good. We don't want that. So we'll just get rid of that. Select this whole thing and just hit delete. And then we'll move this. There's a bit of an interpolation problem now because we got rid of that one. So we'll pull this. That's going to have a lot of pop in it now. Boom. I really like how he's curving so much. It's like his foot's going forward too quickly. Almost like it to lag behind a little bit. So I'm just going to throw a key. I'm just going to grab this and just pull it back. Like that. So now he's going to kind of pull it through. Yeah, I like the feel of that better. But we still need our anticipation. So I'll deselect that, go back to our actor, go to frame 1, middle click here. So we'll go to about, I don't know, 40 and middle click. So it's cool that he's going down, but I'm thinking to help sell how huge this jump is going to be, he needs to like anticipate into the anticipation. We did a little bit of that last week. So I'm going to select this whole pose, move it forward a bit. I'm just going to put a huge one right here, right in the middle of these, between doing nothing and going to the squash. I'm going to do a complete opposite. So we're going to pull them up. Just like standing long jump. If you're doing standing long jump, you got to really give her a couple times. You kind of build up momentum. So he's going to squash up, kind of pull back. And we will key that. So now he's going to go up, down, bang, and pops out. Okay, so you guys can finish up the remainder of this, get him across the river, and we'll catch up when it's done. Okay, so here's my finished scene. We've got our anticipation. Made a couple tweaks along the way, but I'm pretty happy with how he's jumping, and his little lagging behind there and then following through. It cleaned up little things. So added the twist on the second jump here where he lands, twist, jump, and just a little bit of squishy at the end. And I'll just pop open the graph quick, and you can see that I was able to reuse quite a bit of stuff. So copying, pasting, because it really is the same motion with just added just a little bit of change to it, so it's not cookie cutter. But yeah, so next thing we got to do is add our ripples. Okay, so let's quickly go in here and add our ripples. So click on the switch here, turn on the ripple controls. And there's nothing fancy about this. I just modeled these in rings here, and then all of these verts are attached to a locator. It's the exact same thing we did with the points on Squishy Box, except they're in a ring. So I'll do this jump. So we can select this one, pop the graph open again, and I'll just hit S. Oh, make sure you hit the W key first so it knows where you're putting them. So you can see it's dropped a key right there, 92. You see how it's already got some motion is because there's another ring inside. There's 3 outside rings and an inside ring. The inside ring is parented to the barrel, so that's why we're getting a bit of deforming before we do anything. It's coming from the barrel. So we'll just push this down in Y. And it goes up, go up, and it goes down, and just kind of tapers off. So we'll just grab the position Y here. Just kind of double check that, get a feel for it. That's pretty good. Again, you can tweak this for forever, but get the idea. So this is the same workflow that we did with the chain, except we're going to do it instead of rotation X, we're going to do it with translation Y. So I'm going to copy this, Control C, go to frame 92, select the second curve, make sure you hit the W key, Control V, it'll paste that in, select the next curve, W, Control V. So now all 3 channels should be going down and up, but we need to offset them. So we could do it in the dope sheet, but I'm not going to bother because I'm lazy. So the first one has to go where it goes. Second one's going to happen a little bit later. So I'll just select all these, and I'll just go 1, 2, 3. I'll select the last one. Select those, and we'll do that 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's see how that looks. Good enough. Okay, so We've already animated it once and it's pretty much the same thing, so I don't feel like doing it again. So we'll copy that. Just the Y curve, Control C. Go to our inside curve. Now we don't want to paste it here, we want to paste it at the contact. So right around here, Control V. Oh, hit the W key first so it knows where you're pasting. So that'll go down. And that was 3 frames past. 1, 2, 3. So 140. So we can go back here, grab this one, position Y, copy that, Control C, go to our second one, go to 140, make sure you hit W, Control V, and then go to 143 because the last one was 3 frames after that. Select this, Control C, go to our last curve, Control V. There we go. So now we should have dueling ripples. Perfect. Nice and simple. Okay, so let's do the last thing we got to do is our camera move. We're going to have a slow push in. It's going to cut, and then the camera's going to pull back across the water as Squishy makes his jumps. So I'm going to pop open the item list, and we're going to need our camera. So if you hit Shift A and frame it, you can see it's right there, but it's really difficult to animate a camera with only one view. So we're going to have to split this. So if you go up here to the dot, Control, and just drag to the right, get our 2 viewports. Doesn't matter which side you put it in, I'll just Control Spacebar in here, and I'll put my camera in there. So you can see if I orbit in here, you can see what's happening to my camera in there. So our first shot at frame 1, make sure you've deselected your actor because otherwise his keys will be all over your timeline, and we want to animate the camera. So our first shot was a slow truck in. We're going to have it cut at around frame 48. So let's frame this up. The guy who built this set should have made it longer. Okay, so that'll be our end framing. So we can key that. Just hit S. Make sure you got keys on everything. X, Y, Z, position and rotation, because we won't be scaling the camera. We'll go to frame 0, and then we'll just pull back, and go up a bit, and that'll auto key for us. And then when we scrub forward, it'll just go to our last position. The nice thing about this is it's going to cut on his action. Actually, we'll bump this a little bit so it's happening more. There we go. So we'll select Squishy, just Shift A through the camera. That's the fastest way to get to where we need to be. And Shift A on this camera. You can see our camera now is right in front of him. Not sure where we need to be for this, so we'll just start, I guess, somewhere like that. We don't want to be too close because he takes off quick. He's going to jump right over the camera. We're not going to catch the action. So select our camera and hit S again. It's actually auto-keyed that. But what's happened, because there's such a big jump in the frames, you can see it's throwing our curves all out of whack. So if you just select these ones right here and hit flat, that'll set them back to where they're supposed to be. Okay, so let's go to the end of the shot and we'll pull back. You see our camera is pulling back in this window. Let's see if we can get our final framing that we want. That's pretty good. I don't mind that. And we'll select these keys and these, and we'll flat those. Okay, so this is no tweak. This is just 2 poses. We've got our front beginning framing and our end framing. Let's see how it goes. So slow truck in. It's going to cut, and he's going to start pulling back. We already see that's not working. he's jumping right out of frame. So I think we have to get him back quicker. So that's one way to do it. Just pull back, it'll throw an auto key for us. That's pretty cool. Now you never want to end your camera move on your last frame because it just looks weird. It's too tough to digest. So if we take this last key here at 200 for the camera, we'll just slide it forward. Just, I don't know, say to 85-ish. That'll help speed up our move too. Kind of like how he jumps out of the frame. That was in the board. So one last GL preview. Okay, so here's our final shot. Did a little render of it. There he is. So hopefully you made it through. That was a lot to take in. I apologize for that, but there's lots of features to show, so we still got lots to cover. I'm going to go more into pose-to-pose next week with a human character because I think some of the principles are a little bit lost with Squishy. So we'll cover a couple more principles and a little more pose-to-pose. Anyways, hope you had a good week and enjoy.